Evacuate! Repeat. All troops are to withdraw immediately to your designated evacuation points. Well, this day just went from bad to worse. Ozone tinged the air around us. Our leader was down. We had multiple wounded. It was time to decide if they could be saved or if we would have to abandon them so the rest of us could live. The fear that began dawning in the eyes of those that were coherent, as through the fog of their injuries they realized we may have to sacrifice them for the rest of our survival. It wasn't cowardice on their part or callousness on ours. It's just something that happens when an engagement goes this badly. Looking around and taking stock, I realized two things. I was probably the most senior person who was still coherent, and it was time to make the decision that would decide all of our fates. Reaching for the radio, I felt the true burden as I brought it up. This is Raj of the Hoyter Infantry, 3rd Squad. We are surrounded and pinned down. We have taken heavy casualties and have too many wounded to move. I request immediate support for our squad. Raj, this is Joint Command, please relay your coordinates, came the immediate reply. Joint Command, our radio operator and scout are among the first hit. We do not know how to relay our coordinates. Raj patiently explained with growing despair. Without the coordinates, the order may come down to kill the wounded and try our luck with a retreat. Raj, this is Joint Command. On a standard Hoyter radio pack, there should be a switch on the side of the radio that has a protective cover over it. We're going to need you to lift the cover and flip the switch. That will activate your emergency transponder and allow us to triangulate your position. Joint Command, wait 1, Raj replied, while hastily running his appendages over the radio, trying to fill the cover they described. His lower appendage slid over the top of a big bump. Quickly flipping the radio on its side, Raj flipped the cover up and toggled the switch. A small light bar around the edge of the switch came on. When Raj moved his appendage, the cover slapped back over the switch and extinguished the light. The momentary light was enough to draw some additional fire in their position. Kwan, who was so close that Raj could feel each time he activated his breathing sac, shuddered and fell backwards. Raj turned to find part of Kwan's primary sensor organ had simply ceased to be. The plasma had very neatly cauterized the wound. Joint Command, this is Raj. I think I have activated the switch. A small light came on. Raj, this is Joint Command. Wait 1. Raj listened as plasma bolts sizzled into the cover of his squad mates, who were still holding back the enemy. Blind firing over the cover was the best they could do at this point. The enemy weapons had incredible accuracy. Simply exposing one's visual organs to look at the enemy was enough to terminate your existence. Raj, this is Joint Command. We do not have forces in your area that can provide the necessary aid. Do you understand? Raj suddenly felt pure emptiness. After everything they had done, he was going to have to kill his wounded squad mates so the rest could live. It would be his responsibility to bear as the new squad leader, if he could be called that, with so few of them left. Suddenly, the radio made an odd clicking sound. Raj stared at it distrustfully for a moment. Whoever is transmitting their emergency transponder, identify yourself. Raj stared at the radio for a moment, trying to figure out what just happened. He was talking to the Joint Command already. They knew who he was. Why would they ask him to identify himself again? Repeat. Emergency transponder. Identify. This is Raj of the Hoyter, 3rd Squad. Who is this? Raj, this is the human forward support vessel, Solteria. How bad is your situation? Solteria, this is Raj. We are pinned down and have too many wounded to move. We have requested support from Joint Command. They told us there was no one to aid us. Raj, this is Solteria. Sit tight. Don't worry. Humanity is coming to get you. Raj stared at the radio. He must have lost his mind. This must be a waking dream state he entered when the realization of what he would have to do hit him. It couldn't be real that someone was actually going to save them. No sane person would come down to this. Putting down the radio, Raj raised his plasma weapon over his head and fired in the general direction of where the enemy fire was coming from. It wasn't much, but it was really all he could do at this point. A muffled thump sounded on the other side of the perimeter, out of Raj's sideline. Several new screams erupted from over there. Some type of explosive must have gone off in the soft soil of this forsaken planet. All Raj could hope was that the screams were coming from the already wounded rather than adding to them. Regardless, there was nothing he could do about it right now. There was a very faint noise coming from overhead. As Raj huddled behind his improvised barricade, he tried to place the sound. The enemy had no air vehicles. Joint Command couldn't have detailed any of their own attack craft to come help them because they were needed to guard the evacuation shuttles. Steadily, the noise grew louder between the sizzles and occasional bang of incoming enemy fire. The enemy hadn't advanced from their position, but they were concentrating their incoming fire towards the places the last few members of the squad were blindly shooting over whatever cover they had. Raj looked to his right and some poor soul was laying perfectly still, just hysterically repeating a children's rhyme. One never truly knew what the stresses of battle would do to them until they were there. It was clear that this poor soul, who Raj couldn't identify because they were facing away from him, had simply snapped. That was when Raj remembered that he was the one who had snapped. After all, his mind had fabricated an entire whole radio conversation about someone coming, even though Joint Command had told him there was no one to come. He fired another volley of shots over his cover. Then he took his appendage off his weapon, long enough to slap himself. Hard. He needed to pull it together. He was in charge and everyone was going to die if he didn't get it together and do what needed to be done. Raj reached for his sidearm. What he needed to do next was going to live with him the rest of his life. A small part of his mind wondered if he would be able to actually live with it or not. That overhead noise had finally gotten loud enough that Raj could identify it. The sound of grav thrusters. Big grav thrusters. Working at military thrust, if you had to guess, by the sheer fact that he could hear them. Soon the enemy did have air support. Why would they bother calling it in, though? Raj and his squad couldn't constitute a true threat on this battlefield if they wanted to at this point. The fact that they had more wounded than walking was proof enough of that. Didn't the enemy know that? As he sat with his back pressed against cover, trying to reason out just what the enemy was thinking, wasting such a major resource on a bunch of wounded, there was suddenly a shift in the pitch of the grav thrusters. So the enemy craft had finally gotten within range and needed to slow down enough to get a clean shot off. Raj rolled it around in his mind and decided he would take it as an honour that the enemy had deemed their wounded squad such a threat. Suddenly, the enemy positions began firing with unprecedented intensity at Raj and his squad. Lost in his own world and completely detached from everyone around him, he simply asked why. Why would they attack with such renewed vigour? Was it important that they not move? Did the weapon the air vehicle was going to use have such a small area of effect that it wouldn't simply wipe out their entire position? Raj had thought things were loud. A deafening noise came from overhead. In his deafened state, he could only feel a vibration coming to him through the ground. As he was trying to decide if it was one big vibration with lots of frequency changes, or lots of little vibrations coming together, it stopped. Just as quickly as it had started, it simply stopped. At the edge of his vision, he saw one of his fellow survivors waving their appendage at him. Raj barely reacted. With that much movement, the enemy would surely end that fall in a moment. As the appendage continued to wave at him, he finally registered that it was Morris. That was too bad. Raj really liked him and would miss him. Morris told the best jokes, even if they were long-winded. Something hard impacted Raj's side. He looked at the offending object, wondering if it had been some kind of explosive device. As he stared dumbly at the object, he realized it was a rock. What was going on? When was the last time a simple rock had been used on a modern battlefield? This was just cruel of the enemy. This was a level of humiliation they did not deserve. While looking at the rock, Raj had another realization. He had his sidearm out and in his appendage. Why was his sidearm out? Another hard impact on the same side. Raj even saw the rock as it fell to the ground this time. He looked up and around, trying to at least identify the enemy this time. He wanted to look into the face of someone who had so little respect for him as an infantryman. Morris. Morris was gesturing much larger now than he had before. Was he the one throwing the rocks? Upon realizing that he actually had Raj's attention, Morris became much more animated with his rapid gesturing from behind his cover. How had the enemy not shot him yet? A simple flash of additional light had ended poor Kwan's life. Raj watched in horror as Morris cautiously moved out of cover towards him. The poor guy has snapped under the pressure. To draw so much attention to yourself was bad enough, but to do that and then leave cover? Morris must be looking for a quick end. That must be it. Raj blankly, emptily stared at Morris as they made their slow way towards him. Moving from cover to cover, Morris was beside Raj in what somehow was both an eternity and no time. Raj stared at Morris. His air sac moved. That's weird. Normally when a Hyoita's air sac moves, they are talking. How can Morris move his air sac without making noise? That was an unheard of skill. And why would he show it off now, in the middle of a battlefield? Raj's appendage was heavy. He looked down at it, trying to figure out why it was so heavy. There was his sidearm. Why wasn't his sidearm in his holster? He felt a sharp, stinging impact this time. What was that? Had he finally been hit? Had the enemy used the distraction Morris provided to sneak around to get a better angle on him? Speaking of the enemy, when was the last time he fired his weapon over his cover to keep them away? Raj couldn't remember. As he reached for his weapon, his appendage suddenly stopped. Why did it stop? Because there was another appendage around it. How was there another appendage close enough to grab his? As Raj stared at the appendage that shouldn't be there, he felt another sharp stinging sensation. What was that? Why was it still there? Raj followed the appendage that shouldn't be there along its length. When he got to the body, he simply swung his head to look up. There was Morris. Morris, what are you doing here? Raj asked. Or at least he tried to ask. He didn't hear anything when he spoke. Had he really spoken? This time he saw some movement at the edge of his vision. That thrice-damned stinging sensation was back. Wait a minute. Did Morris just slap Raj with one of his appendages? Raj was still trying to puzzle that question out when he felt appendages on his head. He panicked and tried to reach for them. For some reason, his body was very slow to react. His vision swam dizzily as his head was wrenched around to face the enemy positions. Well, in the grand scheme of things, there were worse ways to go than facing your enemy head on. Raj made his peace with the fact that this would be the last view he would ever have. It sure was taking the enemy a long time to hit someone who was being held still for them. Slowly, Raj scanned with his visual organs, searching for the flash of enemy fire that would end his existence. A disconnected part of his brain wondered if he would even see the plasma bolt that would end him, or if everything would just suddenly go black. There wasn't a flash. There weren't any flashes. That didn't make sense. Raj stared. No flashes. How was that possible? As he was trying to figure this new development out, his vision swung again. This time, his visual organs were pointed towards... What the hell was that? Some kind of rock that was all the wrong colours was moving towards him. It was definitely not a Hyoita, and it was definitely moving, and it was definitely purposefully moving towards him. That was when the blackness came. The report showed that Raj and the rest of the Hyoita's third squad had been rendered completely deaf. When the Solitaria had reversed atmospheric entry speed under military thrust right over their position, it had displaced so much air that it had ruptured their hearing membranes. The blown-out building they were sheltering under was the only thing that had prevented the pressure wave from outright killing them all. The records showed that the human ship had employed a truly alarming number of weapon emplacements along its hull that fire some sort of metal projectiles. The enemy were not killed. They were chewed apart by these terrifying weapons. The Soteria used mag pads dropped from several points along its exterior hull to create a rapid drop zone. The humans clad in armor had leapt out of the ship towards these pads, which at the last moment arrested their considerable momentum to facilitate a safe landing speed. The humans had quickly realized that the Hoita were all going into shock. Several medics were mixed in with the forces that had dropped in. They weren't able to fully assess the Hoita, but they were able to radio back and get stabilization procedures for them. Once they were stable enough for transport, the humans had called for rescue pods to be dropped, while several squads had grabbed the mag pads and began removing rods from the sides of it and snapping them together. The pods were simply dropped from the various exfiltration hatches the Solteria bolstered, aimed at the mag pads. Rather than cratering into the soil, the pods were designed to get close to the mag pads and roll off the magnetic field that was generated. The humans had very efficiently moved the wounded Hoita into the rescue pods. The mag pads were flipped over, and the rods were inserted into several points designed for the purpose. The pods were pushed up onto a pad until it was touching all the rods. The squad would step back, and the pad operator would hit the button, which would launch the pod. The Soteria had deployed a low-hanging net that had large magnets at each joint. When a net had caught as many rescue pods as it could handle, it was retracted into the bay so the magnets could be deactivated to release all the pods. The human rescue operation had taken 12 minutes. From the time they broke orbit to the time the entire Hoita squad had been recovered and the humans were once again climbing out of atmosphere. 12. The Alien Joint Command had written the entire squad off to be left as a rearguard because they were in a hopeless position. The humans acted like they hadn't done anything extraordinary. From that day onward, every pinned-down soldier on every backwater world prayed to hear that magic response to a hail for rescue and help. Don't worry, humanity is coming to get you.